Hey, I'm Dave once again with EVM Pulse TV, and what you see going on behind me is a similar scene that's happening all across the U.S. and Canada today. It's Amateur Radio Field Day, and with me is a ham operator, Roger Emery of Albany, Oregon. And Roger, explain to us exactly what Field Day is all about.
Well, Field Day is just for us to bring out our equipment and test it and set up different antennas and try to communicate with as many people throughout the United States and maybe up into Canada. And it's just a way to test our equipment out in the field in case we have an emergency so that we know what to operate with.
Now, this is a lot of fun, and by the way, I'm a ham operator as well. My call is KF7RPR. What's your call, Roger?
And I'm a Whiskey 7 Alpha Charlie Whiskey.
So it's a lot of fun. We have fun doing amateur radio, but it's also a very vital need of communication in the event of disasters.
That is correct. And that's one of the things we're doing here. If we have an emergency, we may need to take our equipment out into the field, set it up, and provide communications for emergency services groups or anybody else that needs help.
And one of the great things about Field Day is they have a chance to get all of their equipment out, the generators, the batteries, set up the antennas, and actually test it. That's what Field Day is designed to do, isn't it?
That is correct. Our entire operation here is being operated off of 4 6-volt batteries. And we have 2 of them charging and 2 of them we're operating on. And as time progresses, we'll switch them around so we keep going. We have a digital station there and a voice operated station here operating. So we got all sorts of communications going.
And we'll take a look at that in just a moment. If you've ever watched news reports of the aftermath of earthquakes and natural disasters, especially here in the U.S. and Canada, you'll notice that one of the first communication links into an area that's been hard hit is the ham radio or amateur radio community, isn't it?
That's correct. We come in and provide backup emergency communications for any of the agencies that need our help. And we also provide health and welfare traffic that goes out for people who need to get a hold of their loved ones and say, I'm okay and everything's fine, so we also do that.
And you also help with search and rescue. It doesn't have to be a disaster. It can be just a weekend search and rescue operation.
That is correct. Some of the agencies that we do help, like the Sheriff's Search and Rescue, if they need our help up in the mountains for communications, we go out and help them also. So it can be locally or clear up in the mountains.
And one of the great things about, like when I travel, I take my 2-meter rig here, and some places where my cell phone doesn't work and I break down, I can call for help because usually amateur radio repeaters will cover an area that a lot of cell phones won't cover.
That's correct. And one of the other things, if we have a major disaster or anything, everybody's going to get on their cell phone and call in. Well, the cell phone system is going to break down. Where our system won't break down, we will be able to communicate when everything else fails.
And one of the reasons the cell phone system breaks down is the cell phone system is not designed or does not have the capacity for everyone to try to make a phone call at once. And during a disaster, that's what happens. And that's why the cell phone system gets overloaded, and that's why you have to turn to the amateur radio community.
That is correct. So everybody, would like to help with their cell phones, but it's not going to work that well. When it does, it works fine, and so's our system. And a lot of the stuff that is being done today with cell phones and everything, with their types of communications, came from amateur radio in one form or another, like text messaging. We were doing that way before cell phones even thought of doing it.
Okay. Now, where are we talking today? We've got a couple, 3 or 4 antennas set up here. We'll talk about those here in just a moment. But where are we able to communicate to today as we're talking from Lebanon, Oregon?
Well, we're actually contacting all over the United States. We're talking up into Canada, back east, down into Texas, California, Hawaii, Alaska, anywhere in the continental United States.
We're here at the Amateur Radio Field Day in Lebanon, Oregon. One of the great things that amateur radio operators do is they're able to provide remote communications when there's no power. And what we're looking at here is an exercise bicycle that has a car generator attached to it that's charging the batteries. This was your idea, wasn't it?
Yeah, I thought, well, I have an alternator and I have the bike, and I'll just give it a try and see if it works.
How long does it take to charge your batteries using your exercise bicycle?
I have used the bike to charge my batteries for my home station, and I've operated the station for 6 months without any other source of electricity. Doing this about 15, 20 minutes a day.
How long have you been a ham operator?
Since 1983.
And why do you do it?
Who knows? Just to communicate with people all over the world and have get-together like this.
Here at the Amateur Radio Field Day in Lebanon, we are talking to amateur radio operators from all over the U.S. What's your name, sir, and what's your call?
I'm Dale, KL2BO.
And you're talking on what frequencies, and explain to the folks what's going on here.
Well, this is 40 meters. Right now I'm talking on 7.236.9, and we're making an attempt to get every state we can. Right now we're trying to find Arizona, but it's getting pretty, airways getting pretty loaded up.
So what states have we talked to so far?
So we talked to Washington, Oregon, California, lots of California, too much California right now, Nevada, Idaho, Montana, and Utah. And British Columbia, that's right.
British Columbia. Are there certain times of the day where it's easier to communicate because of what's called skywave, and you might explain that a little bit?
Yeah, just the way it bounces through the atmosphere, and as the sun goes over, it changes, and so the the waves will pretty much go over the map and head east. So later on, we'll get more of the Midwest and head toward the east.
How long have you been a ham operator?
Since about '06.
Why?
Something I've always wanted to do since I was a kid. I've always been interested in it, so it's a big hobby of mine.
Have you helped to provide communications during events or search and rescue or emergency occasions?
Just mainly during the events. I've done a few of the triathlons in the area, the bicycle or the covered bridge bicycle tours, things like that.
What would you say to encourage? One of the things that we'd like to see is more young people get involved in amateur radio. What would you say to invite some young people to get encouraged and excited about the hobby?
Well, this for one is a great way to do it. Yeah, kids aren't getting involved enough, in my opinion. But if they can come out here and see what we're doing, get involved with, with communications around the country and even around the world.
One of the things that you may notice when you look at an amateur radio antenna is some of them are really small, like this one that I carry around with me on my little 2-meter rig. But some of them, as you look at some homes, are this huge metal antennas, and then some are simply just wires strung between trees. We're talking here to Tony, W7PCU. And Tony, first of all, explain what frequency this is and why different antennas are different sizes.
Well, this antenna is pretty large for the reason of the frequencies that we're operating on. Now, this is high frequency, and it'll go with an antenna tuner from 80 meters up to 10 meters. So we have to have a good enough stretch out in order to compensate for all the frequencies with the antenna tuner. And like you said before, the frequency, like your little short antenna on your walkie-talkie, the higher the frequency, the shorter the antenna goes. So the longer the frequency, the longer the antenna, or the lower the frequency.
But if we're talking to locations like in Arizona, New York, wherever, maybe across the world, then we have to use HF, and that's where these big antennas come into play. And
this is just one as what we call a loop antenna. They have others called Yagi antennas, which are kind of like giant, like a TV antenna is what it looks like, except bigger. They're almost about 30 some odd feet across, and have them stacked, and that's for your long haul type stuff. This will do a 360 type of radiation and pick up where the Yagi, like your TV antenna, it's a directional, so wherever you aim it is where you're going to be picking up or talking to.
Now, one of the things that amateur radio operators have a challenge with sometimes is neighbors sometimes don't like the big antennas. But the nice thing about the big antennas is it allows us to talk long distances. And in the event of disasters, those big antennas might be the difference between life and death for some people.
That'd be correct. A lot of the short local stuff is on VHF, like your walkie-talkie, but when we have to go farther distances, then we use the high frequency mode, and we can get the farther distances to get more assistance coming in from maybe FEMA or whatever else, whoever we may wind up talking to. So, yeah.
Okay, Tony W7PCU, thanks for talking to us today.
Well, thank you very much for coming in. Appreciate that.
I'm Dave Adams. I'm KF7RPR with EVM Pulse TV Networks and KGAL Radio, and we're looking forward to coming to your community and see what's going on.